all things which are, or may be, the object of appropriation. NCC 414 Characteristics. USA. 1. Utility. Capacity to satisfy human wants. 2. Substantivity and individuality. Separate and autonomous existence. 3. Susceptibility of being appropriated. What cannot be appropriated because of their distance, depth, or immensity cannot be considered things, i.e. stars, ocean. Classification: hidden treasure, any hidden and unknown deposit of money, jewels, or other precious objects, the lawful ownership of which does not appear. NCC 439 Owner of the land, building, or other property on which the hidden treasure was found, also owns it, subject to 1. Right of a finder by chance who is not a trespasser/intruder, 1/2 of treasure. 2. Right of a usufructuary who finds treasure, 1/2 of treasure. 3. Right of state to acquire things of interest to science or the arts. NCC 438 Based on mobility, immovable or movable real or immovable property. NCC 415 1. Land, buildings, roads, and constructions of all kinds adhered to the soil. 2. Trees, plants, and growing fruits, while they are attached to the land or form an integral part of an immovable. 3. Everything attached to an immovable in a fixed manner, in such a way that it cannot be separated therefrom without breaking the material or deterioration of the object. 4. Statues, reliefs, paintings, or other objects for use or ornamentation, placed in buildings or on lands by the owner of the immovable in such a manner that it reveals the intention to attach them permanently to the tenements. 5. Machinery, receptacles, instruments, or implements intended by the owner of the tenement for an industry or works which may be carried on in a building or on a piece of land, and which tend directly to meet the needs of the said industry or works. 6. Animal houses, pigeon houses, beehives, fish ponds, or breeding places of similar nature, in case their owner has placed them or preserves them with the intention to have them permanently attached to the land, and forming a permanent part of it. The animals in these places are included. 7. Fertilizer actually used on a piece of land. 8. Mines, quarries, and slag dumps, while the matter thereof forms part of the bed, and waters either running or stagnant. 9. Docks and structures which, though floating, are intended by their nature and object to remain at a fixed place on a river, lake, or coast. 10. Contracts for public works, and servitudes, and other real rights over immovable property. Categories of immovables. NIDA. 1. By nature. 2. By incorporation. 3. By destination. 4. By analogy. Immovables by nature cannot be moved from place to place. Their intrinsic qualities have no utility except in a fixed place. PAR 1 and 8. 1. PAR 1. A. Building. Their adherence to the land must be permanent and substantial. B. Buildings have been considered as immovables, despite I. Treatment by the parties, e.g. they constitute a separate mortgage on the building and the land Ponzaland v. Laxamana. 2. Separate ownership, i.e. a building on rented land is still considered an immovable. Tolentino. 2. PAR 8. A. Mineral deposits. I. Minerals still deposited in the soil. 2. When minerals have been extracted, they become chattel. B. Slag dump. Dirt and soil taken from a mine and piled upon the surface of the ground. Inside the dump can be found the minerals. C. Waters, those still attached to or running through the soil or the ground. Immovables by incorporation are essentially movables but are attached to an immovable in such a way as to be an integral part. PAR 2, 3, 4, 6 and 7. 1. PAR 2. A. Trees and plants, only immovables when they are attached to the land or form an integral part of an immovable. I. When they have been cut or uprooted, they become movables. B. By special treatment of Act 1508, Chattel Mortgage Law, growing crops may be subject of a chattel mortgage. C. For the purpose of attachment, growing crops are to be attached in the same manner as realty. Rule 59, Sector 7, 2, PAR 3, A. Residential Vinta and Roman Law. B. Attachment in a fixed manner. Breakage or injury in case of separation will be substantial, e.g. wells, sewers, aqueducts, and railways. I. Whether attached by the owner himself or some other person. 3. PAR 7 actually used. It has been spread over the land. Immovables by destination are essentially movables but by the purpose for which they have been placed in an immovable, partake of the nature of an immovable. Par 4, 5, 6 and 9. 1. Par 4, a. Requisites, I. Placed by the owner or by the tenant, as agent. 2. With intention of attaching them permanently even if adherence will not involve breakage or injury. B. Where the improvement or ornaments placed by the lessee are not to pass to the owner at the expiration of the lease, they remain movables for chattel mortgage purposes. Davos Sawmill v. Castillo, 1935, 2. Par 3 v. Par 4. Par 3 Par 4 cannot be separated from immovable without breaking or deterioration. Can be separated from immovable without breaking or deterioration. Need not be placed by the owner. Must be placed by the owner, or by his agent. Expressed or implied real property by incorporation. Real property by incorporation and destination. 3. Par 5, a. Immovability depends upon their being destined for use in the industry or work in the tenement, I. The moment they are separated from the immovable or from the industry or work in which they are utilized, they recover their condition as movables. 2. If it is still needed for the industry but separated from the tenement temporarily, the property continues to be immovable. B. Requisites for immovability in Par 5, I. Placed by the owner or the tenant, as agent. 2. Adapted to the needs of the industry or work. C. Except, estoppel. D. Parties may, by agreement, treat as personal property that which by nature would be real, as long as no third parties would be prejudiced. That characterization is effective between the parties. McCarty Leasing v. Wherever, 1983. E. Effect of attachment. I. Machinery becomes part of the immovable. 2. The installation of machinery and equipment in a mortgaged sugar central for the purpose of carrying out the industrial functions and increasing production, constitutes a permanent improvement on said sugar central and subjects said machinery and equipment to the mortgage constituted thereon. Birkencutter v. C.U. Unjan, 1935, 4. Par 6 Requisites, a. Placed by the owner or the tenant, as agent. B. With the intention of permanent attachment. C. Forming a permanent part of the immovable. 5. Par 9, a. A floating house tied to a shore and used as a residence is considered real property, considering that the waters on which it floats are considered immovables. B. But if the floating house makes it a point to journey from place to place, it assumes the category of a vessel, and is considered immovable. Immovables by analogy, contracts for public works, servitudes, other real rights over immovable property, e.g. usufruct and lease of real property for a period of 1 year and registered Par 10 note, enumeration in art. 415 Not absolute. 1. Parties may by agreement treat as, but effective only as to them. It is based, partly, upon the principle of estoppel. Evangelista versus Alto Surety, 1958. 2. For purposes of taxation, improvements on land are commonly taxed as realty, even though for some purposes, they might be considered as personalty. It is a familiar phenomenon to see things classified as real property for purposes of taxation, which on general principle, might be considered personal property. Manila Electric v. Central Bank, 1962, Personal or Movable 416 and 417, cc. 1. Those movables susceptible of appropriation which are not included in the preceding article. 2. Real property which by any special provision of law is considered as personalty. 3. Forces of nature which are brought under control by science. And 4. In general, all things which can be transported from place to place without impairment of the real property to which they are fixed. 5. Obligations and actions which have for their object movables or demandable sums. And 6. Shares of stock of agricultural, commercial, and industrial entities, although they may have real estate. Tests to determine movable character. 1. By exclusion. A. Everything not included in Article 415. B. Parties cannot by agreement treat as immovable that which is legally movable. 2. By description. A. Ability to change location, whether it can be carried from place to place. B. Without substantial injury to the immovable to which it is attached. The steel towers built by Meralco are not buildings or constructions since they are removable and merely attached to a square metal frame by means of bolts, which when unscrewed could easily be dismantled and moved from place to place. without breaking the material or causing deterioration to the object they are attached. Board of Assessment Appeals v. Merlco. 3. By special provision of law. A. Growing crops under the chattel mortgage law. B. Machinery installed by a lessee not acting as agent of the owner. Davos Sawmill v. Castillo. C. Intellectual property. Considered personal property. It consists in the pecuniary benefit which the owner can get by the reproduction or manufacture of his work. 4. By forces of nature, e.g. electricity, gas, heat, oxygen. Importance and significance of classification under the Civil Code. 1. In criminal law, a. Usurpation of property can take place only with respect to real property. RPC 312. B. Robbery and theft can be committed only against personal property. RPC 293, 308. 2. In the form of contracts involving movables and immovables. A. Subject matter of specific contracts. I. Only real property can be the subject of real mortgage. NCC 2124 and Anticrisis NCC 2132. 2. Only personal property can be the subject of voluntary deposit. NCC 1966, Pledge NCC 2094 and Chattel Mortgage Act 1508. B. Donations of real property are required to be in a public instrument. NCC 749, but a donation of a movable may be made orally or in writing. NCC 748. 3. For acquisitive prescription. A. Real property can be acquired by prescription in 30 years, bad faith, and 10 years, good faith. NCC 1137, 1134. B. Movables can be acquired by prescription in 8 years, bad faith, and 4 years, good faith. NCC 1132. 4. Actions for recovery of possession. A. Possession of real property, recovered through acción revindicatoria, acción publicana, forcible entry, and unlawful detainer. B. Possession of movable property, recovered through replace even. 5. Venue of actions. A. Real actions. Actions concerning real property are commenced in the court which has jurisdiction over the area where the real property is situated. Rules of Court. Rule 4 Sector 1. B. Personal actions, commenced where the plaintiff or any of the principal plaintiffs, or where the defendant or any of the principal defendants resides, or if a non-resident defendant, where he may be found, at the election of the plaintiff. Rule 4 Sector 2, 6. The governing law. Private international law. A. Immovables, governed by the law of the country where they are located. B. Movables, governed by the personal laws of the owner, which in some cases is the law of his nationality and in other cases, the law of his domicile. 7. In affecting third persons. A. In transactions involving real property, must be recorded in the Registry of Property to affect third persons. B. In transactions involving personal property, registration is not required, except for chattel mortgages. Chattel Mortgage Register, NCC 2140, based on ownership either of public dominion or private ownership. NCC 419. Churches and other consecrated objects are considered outside the commerce of man. They are considered neither public nor private property. Public dominion. Property of public dominion is outside the commerce of man. They cannot be the subject matter of private contracts, cannot be acquired by prescription, and they are not subject to attachment and execution nor burdened with a voluntary easement. Public dominion as defined by NCC 420. Public domain used in Art 12, Section 2, 1987, Constitution. Public lands. Public Land Act. Characteristics. 1. Not owned by the state but pertains to it as territorial sovereign, to hold in trust for the interest of the community. 2. Purpose, for public use, and not for use by the state as a juridical person. 3. Cannot be the subject of appropriation either by the state or by private persons. Classifications, administered by the state. NCC 420. 1. Those intended for public use. Roads, canals, rivers, torrents, ports and bridges constructed by the state. Banks, shores, roadsteads, and others of similar character, may be used by everybody, even by strangers or aliens, but nobody can exercise over it the rights of a private owner. 2. Those intended for some public service. A. may be used only by authorized persons but exists for the benefit of all. B. E.g. fortresses, unleased mines, and civil buildings. 3. Those for the development of the national wealth includes natural resources such as minerals, coal, oil, and forest. 4. Patrimonial property. A. Owned by the state over which it has the same rights as private individuals in relation to their own property. B. Subject to the administrative laws and regulations on the procedure of exercising such rights. C. E.g. friar lands, escheated properties, and commercial buildings. D. Purpose. I. Enables the state to attain its economic ends. 2. Serves as a means for the state's subsistence and preservation. 3. Enables the state to fulfill its primary mission. E. Conversion of property of public dominion for public use to patrimonial property. I. Property of public dominion, when no longer intended for public use or for public service, shall form part of the patrimonial property of the State NCC. 422. Civil Code. 2. Requires a declaration by the government, executive or legislative departments, that it is no longer needed for public use or service. Administered by municipal corporations. NCC 424. 1. Property for public use, in the provinces, cities, and municipalities, consist of the provincial roads, city streets, municipal streets, the squares, fountains, public waters, promenades, and public works for public service paid for by said provinces, cities, or municipalities. 2. Patrimonial property of municipal corporations. A. The province or municipality, as a juridical entity, also possesses private property to answer for its economic necessities. B. Classification of properties of provinces, cities, and municipalities. Salas v. Jarencio, 1972. I. Properties acquired with their own funds in their private or corporate capacity over which the political subdivision has ownership and control. 2. Properties of public dominion held in trust for the state's inhabitants are subject to the control and supervision of the state. C. A municipal corporation must prove that they acquired the land with their own corporate funds. D. Presumption that land comes from the state upon the creation of the municipality. All lands in the possession of the municipality except for those acquired with its private funds, are deemed to be property of public dominion, held in trust for the state for the benefit of its inhabitants. E. Congress has paramount power to dispose of lands of public dominion in a municipality, the latter being a subdivision only for purposes of local administration. Salas v. Jarencio, 1972. Private ownership can be exercised by the state in its private capacity or by private persons. Kinds. 1. Patrimonial property. Property owned by the state and its political subdivisions in their private capacity. All property of the state not included in NCC 420, on public dominion. NCC 421 to 424. 2. Property belonging to private persons, either individually or collectively. NCC 425. 1. Property of private ownership, besides the patrimonial property of the state. Provinces, cities, and municipalities, consists of all property belonging to private persons, either individually or collectively. 2. Refers to all property belonging to private persons, natural or juridical, either individually or collectively. Co-owned property. Determination. 2 different views. 1. Determined by how the property was used. In province of Zamboanga v. City of Zamboanga, 1968, property was considered patrimonial for they were not for public use. 2. Determined by how the property was acquired. According to Salas v. Jarencio, 1972, the absence of a title deed to any land, showing that it was acquired with its private or corporate funds, the presumption is that such land came from the state upon the creation of the municipality. Conversion. Alienable public land converted to private property through prescription. Alienable public land held by a possessor, personally / through predecessors in interest, openly, continuously and exclusively, for 30 years is converted to private property by the mere lapse or completion of the period. The application for confirmation is mere formality, because land had already been converted, giving rise to a registrable title. Director of Lands VIAC. Private land converted to property of public dominion through abandonment and reclamation, through the gradual encroachment or erosion by the ebb and flow of the tide. Private property may become public if the owner appears to have abandoned the land, and permitted it to be totally destroyed so as to become part of the shore. The land having disappeared on account of the gradual erosion, and having remained submerged until they were reclaimed by the government, they are public land. Government v. Cabangas based on consumability NCC 418 only applies to movables, determined by nature consumable. 1. Movables which cannot be used in a manner appropriate to their nature without their being consumed, e.g. food. 2. Consumable goods cannot be the subject matter of a commoditum unless the purpose of the contract is not the consumption of the object, as when it is merely for exhibition. Non-consumable all others not falling under consumable e.g. money and coin susceptibility to substitution only applies to movables, determined by the intention of the parties. Fungi blessed things which, because of their nature or the will of the parties, are capable of being substituted by others of the same kind, not having a distinct individuality. Non-fungibles. 1. Things which cannot be substituted for another. 2. If the parties agreed that the same thing be returned, it is not fungible. Based on the Constitution Articles 2, SEC 3, 1. Public agricultural land. 2. Mineral land. 3. Timber land. 4. National parks. Other classifications by their physical existence. 1. Corporeal. All property the existence of which can be determined by the senses. Residential key tangi possunt. 2. Incorporeal. A. Things having abstract existence, created by man and representing value. B. Includes rights over incorporeal things, credits, and real rights other than ownership over corporeal things. By their autonomy or dependence. 1. Principal, those to which other things are considered dependent or subordinated, such as the land on which a house is built. 2. Accessory, those which are dependent upon or subordinated to the principal. They are destined to complete, enhance, or ornament another property. By susceptibility to deterioration. 1. Deteriorable that deteriorate through use or by time. 2. Non-deteriorable by reason of their susceptibility to division. 1. Divisible, those which can be divided physically or juridically without injury to their nature. E.g., piece of land or an inheritance. 2. Indivisible, those which cannot be divided without destroying their nature or rendering impossible the fulfillment of the juridical relation of which they are object. By reason of designation. 1. Generic, that which indicates its homogeneous nature, but not the individual, such as a horse, house, dress, without indicating it. 2. Specific, that which indicates the species or its nature and the individual, such as the white horse of X existence in point of time. 1. Present, those which exist in actuality, either physical or legal, such as the erected building. 2. Future, those which do not exist in actuality, but whose existence can reasonably be expected with more or less probability, such as unga their fruits. Ownership definition. A. Independent right of exclusive enjoyment and control of a thing. B. For the purpose of deriving all advantages required by the reasonable needs of the owner/holder of right and promotion of general welfare. C. Completely subjected to his will. D. In everything not prohibited by public law or the rights of another right in general rights included in ownership NCC 428. 1. Right to enjoy and dispose of a thing, without other limitations than those established by law. 2. Right of action against the holder and possessor of the thing in order to recover it. Bundle of rights. 1. Jus utendi, right to enjoy and receive what the property produces. 2. Jus fruendi, right to receive fruits. 3. Jus accessions, right to the accessories. 4. Jus abutendi, right to consume a thing by use. 5. Jus disponendi, right to alienate, encumber, transform or even destroy the thing owned. 6. Jus vindicandi, right to recover possession of property based on a claim of ownership. 7. Jus possidendi, right to possess the property, implied from all the other rights. Protecting property basic distinctions. 1. Real right v. personal right. Real rights, rights that confer upon its holder an autonomous power to derive directly from a thing certain economic advantages independently of whoever the possessor of the thing. Personal rights, rights of a person to demand from another as a definite passive subject the fulfillment of a prestation to give, to do, or not to do. Real rights. Personal rights, definite active subject who has the right against all persons. Generally as an indefinite passive subject, definite active subject, creditor, and a definite passive subject, debtor, Object is generally a corporeal thing. Subject matter is always an incorporeal thing. Real rights. Personal rights generally extinguished by the loss or destruction of the thing over which it is exercised. Personal right survives the subject matter. It is directed against the whole world, giving rise to real actions against third persons. It is binding or enforceable only against a particular person, giving rise to personal actions against such debtor. 2. Real action v. personal action. Rule 4 Sector 1-2. Real action. Actions affecting title to or possession of real property or any interest therein. Personal action. All other actions. 3. Action in rem v. action in personam v. action quasi in rem. Action in rem. Action against the property. Judgment binding against the whole world. Action in personam. Action against a specific person. Judgment binding against that particular person. Action quasi in rem. Action against a specific property with respect to a person. Remedies. 1. Self-help NCC 429-430. A. The owner may use such force as may be reasonably necessary to repel or prevent an actual or threatened unlawful physical invasion or usurpation of his property. B. Every owner may enclose or fence his land or tenements by any other means without detriment to servitudes constituted thereon. 2. Actions to recover ownership and possession of real property. Right to recover possession immovable property. 1. Acción revindicatoria. Recovery of ownership of real property. A. Including but not limited to possession. B. Prescription of action, 30 years. 2. Acción publicana. Recovery of a better right to possess, de jure. A. Judgment as to who has the better right of possession. B. Also, actions for ejectment not filed within 1 year must be filed as acción publicana. C. Prescription. 10 years. Distinction between forcible entry and unlawful detainer. 1. Forcible entry. Lawful possessor deprived through fists. A. Fists, force, intimidation, strategy, threats, stealth. B. Prescription. 1 year from dispossession, force, intimidation, threats, or from knowledge of dispossession, strategy, stealth. 2. Unlawful detainer. Possessor refused to vacate upon demand by owner. A. Legal possession, by permission/tolerance, becomes unlawful upon failure to vacate. B. Prescription of action. 1 year from last notice to vacate. Actions for recovery of possession of movable property. Replace Evan. 1. For manual delivery of property. 2. Prescription of right. 4 years. GF. Or 8 years. BF. Requisites for recovery of property. NCC 434. 1. Property must be identified through a relocation survey and a title properly identifying boundaries and location. 2. Plaintiff must rely on the strength of his title and not on weakness of defendant's title. A. Right must be founded on positive title and not on lack or insufficiency of defendants. B. Ei incumbit probatio qui dicit, non qui negat. He who asserts, not he who denied, must prove limitations on ownership. Limitations on the rights of ownership provided by law. General limitations. Taxation. Eminent domain. Police power. 1. Police power. Property taken with no compensation for general welfare. A. When any property is condemned or seized by competent authority in the interest of health, safety, or security, the owner thereof shall not be entitled to compensation, unless he can show that such condemnation or seizure is unjustified. Art. 436, Civil Code. B. Requisites. To justify the exercise of police power, the following must appear. I. The interests of the public generally require such interference, as distinguished from those of a particular class. 2. The means are reasonably necessary for the accomplishment of a purpose, and not unduly oppressive. 2. Taxation. Forced contribution to the operation of government. 3. Eminent domain. Property taken for public use/purpose, but subject to due process and payment of just compensation. Requisites. To justify the exercise of the right of eminent domain, the following requisites must all be present. A. Private property is the object of the expropriation. B. The property is taken by the state or by competent authority. C. The purpose of the taking is for public use. D. The taking must be attended with due process of law. E. There is payment of just compensation. Specific limitations imposed by law. Security, nuisance, stat of necessity, easements voluntarily imposed by owner, servitudes, Mortgages imposed by contract. 1. Legal servitudes. Once requisites are satisfied, the servient owner may ask the court to declare the existence of an easement. A. Art. 644 and 678. Aqueduct. B. Art. 679. Planting of trees. C. Art. 670. Light and view. D. Art. 649 and 652. Right of way. E. Art. 637. Passage of water from upper to lower tenements. F. Art. 676. Drainage of buildings. G. Art. 684 to 687. Lateral and subjacent support. 2. Must not injure the rights of a third person. A. Secutor tuo ut alienam non latas. B. The owner of a thing cannot make use thereof in such manner as to injure the rights of a third person. NCC 431. 3. Act in state of necessity. The owner of a thing has no right to prohibit the interference of another with the same, if the interference is necessary to avert an imminent danger and the threatened damage, compared to the damage arising to the owner from the interference, is much greater. The owner may demand from the person benefited indemnity for the damage to him. NCC 432. 4. Nuisance. A nuisance is any act, omission, establishment, business, condition of property, or anything else which a. Injures or endangers the health or safety of others, or b. Annoys or offends the senses, or c. Shocks, defies, or disregards decency or morality, or d. Obstructs or interferes with the free passage of any public highway or street, or any body of water, or e. Hinders or impairs the use of property. NCC 694. Summary of actions. Action venues: summon, prayer basis, prescription, forcible entry / unlawful detainer, real action in person, possession, prior physical possession 1 year, auction public iana, real action in person, possession, real right of possession 10 years. NCC 555. 4. Auction revendicatoria, real action in person, possession, ownership GF 10 years, BF 30 years. NCC 1137. Unless torrents title, unless laches reconveyance, real action in person, title, ownership 10 years. Action venues: summon, prayer basis, prescription. NCC 1456. Quieting of title, real action, quasi in rem, quieting of title, ownership, imprescriptible, replace even, personal action in person, possession, ownership GF 4 years, BF 8 years. Accession, the right by virtue of which the owner of a thing becomes the owner of everything which is produced thereby, or which is incorporated or attached thereto, either naturally or artificially. NCC 440. Accessories, things joined to or included with a principal thing for the latter's embellishment, better use, or completion. Classification of accession. 1. Accession discreta. Fruits, the right pertaining to the owner of a thing over everything produced thereby, by internal forces. 2. Accession continua, the right pertaining to the owner of a thing over everything that is incorporated or attached thereto, either naturally or artificially, by external forces. By external forces: a. Over immovables. I. Industrial. 2. Natural. 1. Alluvion. 2. Avulsion. 3. Change of course of river. 4. Formation of islands. B. Over movables. I. Conjunction and adjunction. 2. Commixtion and confusion. 3. Specification with respect to immovables. Accession discreta, right of ownership to the fruits. NCC 441. General rule: to the owner of the principal belongs the natural, industrial, and civil fruit. Exception: pulla. 1. Possession in good faith. 2. Usufruct. 3. Lease. 4. Antichrisis. A. He who receives the fruits has the obligation to pay the expenses made by a third person in their production, gathering, and preservation. NCC 443. B. Necessary expenses of production, gathering, and preservation must be borne by the receiver of the fruits. All periodical additions to a principal thing produced by forces inherent to the thing itself. Kinds of fruits. 1. Natural, spontaneous products of soil and the young and other products of animals. NCC 442. 1. Under the rule partis sequitur ventorum, to the owner of female animals would also belong the young of such animals, although this right is lost when the owner mixes his cattle with those of another. 2. Industrial, produced by lands of any kind through cultivation or labor. NCC 442. 2. Standing trees are not fruits since they are considered immovables, although they produce fruits themselves. However, they may be considered as industrial fruits when they are cultivated or exploited to carry on an industry. 3. Civil fruits, easily prorated for under NCC 544. They are deemed to accrue daily and belong to the possessor in good faith in that proportion. Note: A. Natural and industrial fruits are real property while still ungathered. B. Only such as are manifest or born are considered as natural or industrial fruits. Principles applicable to accession. Disc Reta. 1. Time of accrual depending on kind. A. Annuals, from the time seedlings appear on the ground. B. Perennials, from the time fruits actually appear on the plants. C. Young of animals, from the time they are in the womb, although unborn. Beginning of maximum ordinary period of gestation. Fowls, from the time of incubation. 2. A receiver of fruits has the obligation to pay the expenses incurred by a third person in the production, gathering, and preservation. NCC 443. A. Exception. Receiver does not have to pay if fruits are recovered before gathering from a possessor in bad faith. Receiver does not have to pay indemnity. B. But if recovered after fruits have been gathered, receiver must pay since the fruits have been separated from immovable. Hence accession principles will not apply. Principles applicable to accession continua. 1. Accession continua artificial or industrial, building, planting or sowing on land owned by another, over immovables. General rule: whatever is built, planted, or sown on the land of another and improvements or repairs made thereon, belong to the owner of the land subject to the rules on BPS. Presumptions: A. All works, sowing and planting are presumed made by the owner. B. All works are presumed made at the owner's expense, unless the contrary is proved. C. The owner of the principal thing owns the natural, industrial, and civil fruits, except when the following persons exist: I. Possessor in good faith. 2. Usufructuary. 3. Lessee. 4. Anticritic creditor. Meaning of bad faith: A. On the part of the landowner, whenever the building, planting or sowing was done with the knowledge and without opposition on his part. B. On the part of owner of materials, allows the use of his materials without protest. C. On the part of the builder, planter, and sower, knows that he does not have title to the land, nor the right to build thereon, or no permission of the owner of the materials to pay their value. Note: A. Bad faith leads to liability for damages and the loss of the works or the improvement without reimbursement. B. Bad faith of one party neutralizes the bad faith of the other. 2. Accession continua natural, land deposits, etc. A. Alluvium, soil is gradually deposited on banks adjoining the river. Requisites. I. Deposit of soil or sediment is gradual and imperceptible. 2. As a result of the action of the currents of the waters of the river. 3. Land where the accretion takes place is adjacent to the banks of the rivers. 4. Deemed to exist, when the deposit of the sediment has reached a level higher than the highest level of the water during the year. Effect: I. Land automatically owned by the riparian owner. 2. But does not automatically become registered property. Rationale: I. To offset the owner's loss from possible erosion due to the current of the river. 2. Compensate for the subjection of the land to encumbrances and legal easements. B. Avulsion. A portion of land is segregated from one estate by the forceful current of a river, creek, or torrent and transferred to another. Requisites. I. Segregation and transfer of land is sudden and abrupt. 2. Caused by the current of the water. 3. Portion of land transported must be known and identifiable. Or 4. Can also apply to sudden transfer by other forces of nature, such as land transferred from a mountain slope because of an earthquake. Effect: the ownership of the detached property is retained by the owner subject to removal within 2 years from the detachment. C. Change of course of river. Requisites. I. Change in the natural course of the waters of the river. 2. Such change causes the abandonment of the riverbed's natural bed, ground covered by its waters during ordinary floods. Such change is sudden or abrupt. Results: I. Owners whose lands are occupied by the new course automatically become owners of the old bed, in proportion to the area they lost. 2. Owners of the lands adjoining the old bed are given the right to acquire the same by paying the value of the land not exceeding the value of the land invaded by the new bed, the old property of the owner. 3. The new bed opened by the river on a private estate shall become of public dominion. D. During ordinary floods. Such changes sudden or abrupt results. I. Owners whose lands are occupied by the new course automatically become owners of the old bed, in proportion to the area they lost. 2. Owners of the lands adjoining the old bed are given the right to acquire the same by paying the value of the land not exceeding the value of the land invaded by the new bed, the old property of the owner. 3. The new bed opened by the river on a private estate shall become of public dominion. D. Formation of islands. They belong to the state if I. Formed on the seas within the jurisdiction of the Philippines. 2. Formed on lakes. 3. Formed on navigable or floatable rivers. 1. Capable of affording a channel or passage for ships and vessels. 2. Must be sufficient not only to float banks and light boats, but also bigger watercraft. 3. Deep enough to allow unobstructed movements of ships and vessels. 4. Test. Can be used as a highway of commerce, trade, and travel. They belong to the owners of the nearest margins or banks if I. Formed through successive accumulation of alluvial deposits. 2. On non-navigable and non-floatable rivers. 3. If island is in the middle, divided longitudinally in half. Landowner good faith bad faith builder, planter, sower BPS good faith rights of landowner NCC 448. A. By, only after payment of indemnity under NCC 546 and 548 to BPS, 546 and 548, necessary, useful, and ornamental. B. Sell to BP, unless the value of the land is considerably more than that of the building or trees. Remedy. Rent to BP if L does not want to buy. C. Rent to S absolute duties of landowner NCC 447. A. Pay damages. B. Buy or pay for value. C. Allow removal. Landowner good faith bad faith absolute right of landowner NCC 449 to 452. A. Get. B. Demolish the work of B at the expense of B. C. Removal of PS at the expense of PS. D. Sell to BP. E. Rent to the S. F. Damages same as GF. GF landowner good faith bad faith material man good faith rights of landowner. NCC 447 by unless M can remove without damage absolute duties of landowner. NCC 447. 1. Pay damages. 2. Buy or pay for value. 3. Allow removal bad faith absolute right of landowner NCC 447 get same as GF. GF case 1. Landowner is BPS using material of another landowner and BPS owner of material good faith right to acquire the improvements after paying the value of materials. Good faith. 1. Limited right of removal if there would be no injury to work constructed, or without plantings or constructions being destroyed. Article 447. 2. Right to receive payment for value of materials bad faith acquire BPS after paying its value and paying indemnity for damages. Article 447 but subject to OM's right to remove good faith. A. Right to receive payment for value of materials. B. Absolute right of removal of the work constructed in any event. C. Right to be indemnified for damages good faith. 1. Right to acquire the improvements without paying indemnity. 2. Right to acquire indemnity for damages if there are hidden defects known to OM bad faith lose materials without right to indemnity bad faith same as though acted in good faith under Article 453 bad faith same as though acted in good faith under Article 453. Case 2. BPS builds, plants, or sows on another's, and using his own materials landowner BPS and owner of material good faith landowner has option to A. Acquire the improvement after paying indemnity which may be the original cost of improvement or increase in value of the whole brought about by the improvement. B. Sell the land to the BP or collect rent from sower unless value of land is more than the thing built, planted, or sown or BP shall pay rent fixed by parties or by the court in case of disagreement. Note, landowner can be forced to choose under pain of direct contempt or court can choose for him. Good faith BPS has right to retain, right of retention, the land until the payment of indemnity. Note, during this period BPS is not required to pay rent. Good faith landowner has right to collect damages in any case and option to a. Acquire improvements without paying indemnity if the improvements are still standing on the land. B. Sell the land to BP or collect rent from the seller unless value of the improvements, in which case there will be a forced lease. C. Order demolition of improvements or restoration of land to its former condition at the expense of the BPS. Landowner must pay for necessary expenses for preservation. Bad faith. 1. Pay damages to landowner. 2. BPS lose materials without right to indemnity. 3. No right to refuse to buy the land. 4. Recover necessary expenses for preservation of land. Bad faith. 1. Landowner must indemnify BPS for the improvements and pay damages as if he himself did the BPS. 2. Landowner has no option to sell the land and cannot compel BPS to buy the land unless BPS agrees to good faith. BPS has right to 1. Be indemnified for damages. 2. Remove all improvements in any event. Bad faith. Same as though acted in bad faith under Article 453. Bad faith. Same as though acted in bad faith under Article 453. Case 3. BPS builds, plants or sows on another's land with materials owned by third persons. Landowner BPS owner of material. Good faith. A. Right to acquire improvements and pay indemnity to BPS, subsidiarily liable to OM. B. Has option to 1. Sell land to BP except if the value of the land is considerably more. 2. Rent to seller. Good faith. 1. Right of retention until necessary and useful expenses are paid. 2. Pay value of materials to OM. Good faith. 1. Collect value of material primarily from BPS and subsidiarily liable for landowner if BPS is insolvent. 2. Limited right of removal. Good faith. 1. Right to acquire improvements and pay indemnity to BPS. 2. Has option to 1. Sell land to BP except if the value of the land is. Good faith. 1. Right of retention until necessary and useful expenses are paid. 2. Keep BPS without indemnity to OM and collect damages from him. Bad faith. 1. Lose the material without right to indemnity. 2. Must pay for damages to BPS. Landowner BPS owner of material considerably more. 2. Rent to seller. 3. Without subsidiary liability for cost of materials. Good faith. 1. Landowner has right to collect damages in any case and option to 1. Acquire improvements without paying for indemnity, or 2. Demolition or restoration, or 3. Sell to BP, or to rent to seller. 2. Pay necessary expenses to BPS. Bad faith. Recover necessary expenses for preservation of land from landowner unless landowner sells land. Bad faith. 1. Recover value from BPS, as if both are in good faith. 2. If BPS acquires improvement, remove materials if feasible without injury. 3. No action against landowner but liable to landowner for damages. Bad faith. Same as when all acted in good faith under Article 453. Bad faith. Same as when all acted in good faith under Article 453. Bad faith. Same as when all acted in good faith under Article 453. Bad faith. 1. Acquire improvement after paying indemnity and damages to BPS unless latter decides to remove. 2. Subsidiarily liable to OM for value of materials. Good faith. 1. May remove improvements. 2. Be indemnified for damages in any event. Good faith. 1. Remove materials if possible without injury. 2. Collect value of materials from BPS, subsidiarily from landowner. Bad faith. 1. Acquire improvements after indemnity, subsidiarily liable to OM for value of materials. 2. Has option to a. Sell the land to BP except if the value of the land is considerably more. B. Rent to seller. Bad faith. A. Right of retention until necessary expenses are paid. B. Pay value of materials to OM and pay him damages. Good faith. A. Collect value of materials primarily from BPS and subsidiarily from landowner. B. Collect damages from BPS. C. If BPS acquires improvements, remove materials in any event. Good faith. A. Acquire improvement after paying indemnity, subsidiarily liable to OM. B. Landowner has option to a. Sell land to BP except if value of land is considerably more. B. Rent to seller. Bad faith. 1. Right of retention until necessary expenses are paid. 2. Pay value of materials to OM. 3. Pay damages to OM good faith. Collect value of materials primarily from BPS and subsidiarily from landowner. Collect damages from BPS. If BPS acquires improvements, absolute right of removal in any event bad faith acquire improvements and pay indemnity and damages to BPS unless latter decides to remove materials good faith. 1. Receive indemnity for damages. 2. Absolute right of removal of improvements in any event bad faith. 1. No right to indemnity. 2. Loses right to material with respect to movable property. 3 types. 1. Conjunction or adjunction. Process where two movables belonging to different owners are attached to each other to form a single object. 2. Mixture. The union of material where the components lose their identity. Kinds. A. Commixtion. Mixture of solids. B. Confusion. Mixture of liquids and gases. 3. Specification. Transforming/giving of a new form to another's material through labor adjunction. Requisites. 1. There are two movables belonging to two different owners. 2. They are united in such a way that they form a single object. 3. They are so inseparable that their separation would impair their nature or result in substantial injury to either component. Kinds of adjunction. 1. Inclusion or engraftment, e.g. a diamond is set on a gold ring. 2. Soldadura or soldering, e.g. when lead is united or fused to an object made of lead. A. It is ferruminacion if both the accessory and principal objects are of the same metal, and B. Plumbatura, if they are of different metals. 3. Escritura or writing, e.g. when a person writes on paper belonging to another. 4. Pintura or painting, e.g. when a person paints on canvas belonging to another. 5. Tejido or weaving, e.g. when threads belonging to different owners are used in making textile. Ownership of new object formed by adjunction. 1. If union was made in good faith, owner of principal thing acquires the accessory, with obligation to indemnify the owner of the accessory for its value in its uncontroverted state. 2. If union was in bad faith, NCC 470 applies. A. Owner of accessory in bad faith loses the thing incorporated and has the obligation to indemnify the owner of the principal thing for damages. B. If owner of principal is in bad faith, owner of the accessory has the right to choose between the owner of principal paying him its value or that the thing belonging to him be separated, even though for this purpose it be necessary to destroy the principal thing, and in both cases, there shall be indemnity for damages tested. Determine the principal thing in the order of application. The principal is that 1. To which the other has been united as an ornament or for its use or perfection. Rule of importance and purpose. 2. Of greater value. 3. Of greater volume. 4. That of greater merits, taking into consideration all the pertinent legal provisions, as well as the comparative merits, utility, and volume of their respective things.